Good day, fellow fans of good television. I am the Comics Kid 2099, and I am here to talk about an episode of the 2002 television series Firefly. Specifically, I will be talking about the episode titled Safe. This episode picks up more or less where the previous episode, Shindig, left off. Our crew is delivering the cattle that they picked up at the end of Shindig, and River is having an especially not great day. Mal orders River and Simon to go for a walk on this little planet so that they won't be getting in the way of the deal with whoever will be picking up the cattle. During this deal, some local lawmen come to arrest the men who are coming for the cattle, and a shootout takes place. Shepherd Book gets caught in the crossfire, and unfortunately for him, Simon and River have been kidnapped by some of the locals. It turns out, earlier in this episode, when one of the locals said, "If they have something we want, we'll take it," they weren't talking about physical possessions that might be worth something, but rather they needed a doctor, so they took one. The locals who kidnapped River and Simon soon find out that River has special abilities, and they plan to burn her at the stake. Meanwhile, Mal takes Book to an Alliance cruiser where Book shows his ID card, and this gets him a very prompt surgery with no questions asked. After the surgery, Mal comes back for River and Simon. Happy endings all around. This episode especially focuses on Simon and just how much he's had to sacrifice for his sister. I'm usually not the emotional kind of audience, as I typically look at things that are more rational in nature. So there's not much I can say about this other than this episode is very well done, and while I did not tear up, I definitely felt very sad for Simon and River both. I feel awful for Simon, not because he had to abandon his entire life to save his sister, although yeah, that's bad, but his sister knows exactly what he's thinking and going through. This episode gives us River feeling bad for Simon because she thinks that he is ruining his life for her sake. And no matter what Simon tries to say to the contrary, if he thinks that in his heart of hearts, River would know. And so I also feel bad for River because through no fault of her own, she at least believes that she is the cause of trouble for her family and for Simon specifically, and that can't be a good feeling to go through. There's not much I can say about these two, except that this really is an excellent episode to explore Simon's pre-Serenity backstory, and it does so very well. I can't help but compare this episode to the television series Lost just a little bit. With any given episode of Lost, most of the time, I felt like we got way too much flashback in comparison to what all we were getting, or more likely what we weren't getting, on the island. I was thinking while watching this episode of Firefly that we get just the right amount of flashback. I'm not looking at my watch, wondering when the flashbacks will be over when I'm watching this episode. It succinctly gets all of the information that we need across, and then it gets back to the meat and potatoes of the episode. We also have a subplot that begins in this episode, which is, what the heck is up with Shepherd Book? And much like the romantic relationship between Mal and Inara, which was heavily featured in last week's episode, I feel like this is something that I can't really discuss because it was never fully explored. I am sure I will find out all I needed to know and more about Shepherd Book when I read Serenity, A Shepherd's Tale. But for now, and for all of the time that I've had Firefly in my life, this subplot has been one of those things that doesn't really do anything for me when I don't know what it's supposed to be doing for me. I might change my tune in the future after I've read the Shepherd Book graphic novel and I go back to this series. I guess I'll just have to see when that happens. In my review of the episode Bushwhacked, I talked about how the theme of civilization was a little bit heavy-handed and was just spelled out a little too much for my taste. I kind of feel like the same is going on in this episode with the theme of where your home is. We have a scene where one of the locals asks Simon where his home is. Then we have Shepherd Book saying it's good to be home after his surgery. And then we have a scene where River says that their father will come back to take them home. So usually I'm not especially good at picking out theme unless it's really heavy-handed, and when it is, I will complain, because if I can pick it out, it's being spelled out too much. And honestly, even though I can tell you that the theme of this episode is supposed to be home, I'm not really sure if I can say that this episode really explores that theme a whole lot. I get that Simon has given up his old life and has found a new one, and presumably so has Shepherd Book. But that was pretty self-explanatory in the pilot episode. Was there really any need to try and make an entire episode be about this, but not really do anything with it? I don't think I have much more to say about this episode. There were a few really funny lines here, one from Jane, yet another couple of zingers from Zoe, who I am quickly coming to like more and more than I ever have before. Overall, I think this is a solid episode. Not the best in the series, but certainly not the worst. Even if it was the worst, it's not by a huge margin. This series continues to remain the gold standard for entertainment, as far as I'm concerned. So anyhow, having said all of that, I hope you liked this video, and if you did, I hope you will like, comment, share, and subscribe. And I hope you'll come back next week as I tackle another episode of this series. Until then, I hope you guys will keep coming back throughout the rest of the week as I do other videos. Until then, I hope you guys have a great day. See you later.